children. How are you all? Let us start the day with a silent prayer. Please join your hands and close your eyes for the prayer. Dear children, I know all of you are quite busy. Your exams are on the way and you are preparing for the same. And now, let us recall what we did in the previous chapter. We had completed the chapter Democracy and Equality. Homework was given. It was from the text. I expect that you have completed it and submit it on time. The questions were from the text bag, short answer questions. I'll be providing the answer key to the homeworks in the interactive video. You can copy down in your notebook or mark it in your textbook. So now let's recall what we had done the previous day. We had looked into how equality is ensured in our constitution and equality is provided to our citizens in our country. The first step to it was equality in our constitution, where we saw Article 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18, which ensures equality to the citizens. Again, we had noted that there are certain schemes which our government has launched to provide equality. One such scheme that we noted was the midday meal scheme. This was introduced by the government of Tamil Nadu and now it is followed in all the government and government aided schools. And what was the scheme? The scheme was to provide lunch, that is the midday meal, the nutritious lunch to kids up till 8th standard. What was the main purpose of the scheme? Ensures equality to all the children, and also it provided employment to women and people who were considered underprivileged. The main aim was to increase the attendance in schools, and it was noted that once the scheme was launched, many children started enrolling into the schools. The next scheme that we saw was the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, which was launched by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi under the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Andolan. This was a saving scheme for children, for girl children especially, to save money for their education as well as for their marriage. And then we noted that our constitution guarantees universal adult franchise, which is writing or the voting rights for all the citizens of the country. Those citizens who have completed 18 years of age are eligible for the voting rights in our country. And this ensured equality and enhanced the dignity of all individuals. Everybody could vote. And towards the end, we saw the challenges faced by our democracy. Casteism still exists here. Corruption exists here. All these adds up to the challenges to our democracy. Having completed that chapter, we'll start a new chapter. And this time it is from geography, and the chapter is Inside the Earth. Geography lesson 2, Inside the Earth, and it is a very interesting chapter. I hope you will enjoy studying this chapter. Dear children, I have already told that this chapter is going to be a very interesting chapter. Inside the earth. You're going to study what is there and how is the structure of the earth. You have already studied what is the solar system in your lower classes. Our solar system consists of the sun, the planets which move around the sun, the satellites that move around the planets. All these you know. And if I ask you a question, out of the 8 planets that we have, which is the planet that supports life? You would say, what a question. All of you know the answer. It is our beautiful blue planet, the Earth. Look how wonderful it looks. The next question is, how was the Earth formed? For this, we have to go to a flashback, some 4.5 billion years ago. And the story starts there on how the Earth was formed. The Earth was nothing like how it looks today, totally different. Earth was a round ball of homogeneous molten material. You can see here, at that time also, it was revolving around the sun. See? The Earth was a round ball of homogeneous molten material revolving around the sun. And later, when the liquid started cooling, the denser materials of which the Earth was formed, that started to sink to the bottom, that is to the center of the Earth, and formed the solid core or the metallic core. And the lighter materials were pushed to the surface of the Earth, and that formed the crust. So once again, the Earth was a round ball of homogeneous molten material revolving around the sun. As the liquid started cooling down, the denser material, denser means the heavier material, started sinking to the center of the Earth, thus forming the metallic core. And the lighter material, that is the less dense material, were pushed up towards the surface, and that formed the crust. So the next question is, how do we know so much about the Earth? And the answer to that is the study of seismic waves. These waves are created when there is an earthquake, as in this case, you can see how an earthquake is formed. A fault is created and you can see the crust is broken. So here you have the earthquake. Or the next case can be when you see a volcano erupting, as in this case. In these two cases, you can find that waves are released, which are known as seismic waves. When there is an earthquake, when there is a volcano, at that time, the scientists can study how the seismic waves move. And these waves actually are formed when there is a movement in the tectonic plates, about which you have already studied in your previous class. Tectonic plates, these are the plates above which floats on the molten magma. And it is on this that our oceans, our continents are there. And these keep moving. Sometimes it moves apart, sometimes they come close to each other, sometimes they slide against each other. And this movement actually results in the earthquake or a volcano or a landform is formed. And scientists actually study these phenomena. And they come to know the actual strength of the seismic wave, through which materials they can pass. All these details give them the knowledge about the interiors of the Earth. So we have now understood that it is the study of the seismic waves that lets us know what the structure of the Earth looks like. You have noticed, or you might know, that the seismic waves deflect when they meet an obstruction. Okay? Or it can bend when they passes, or when it passes from one medium to another. You have heard about refraction, reflection. So these are the processes that actually happen. And when they do so, the scientists can understand what the materials, or what are the different materials these different layers of the Earth are made up of. Or they can find out what the minerals, which minerals are present in these layers, what is the density of each layer. All these details can be well understood by the study of seismic waves. waves, and that is how we have come to know so elaborately about the structure of the earth. Isn't it interesting? So many new concepts for you to study. Next, let us learn the structure of the earth. The earth is made up of several different layers of material, and each of these materials or these layers have their own distinct characteristics. And we can compare this structure of the earth. If you want to understand how this interior or how the structure of the earth looks like, take an onion and you can see the consecutive layers or the concentric layers of the onion. Somewhat similar is the structure of the earth. Or next time when you see an egg, this is exactly or more similar to the structure of the earth. Look at the egg. It has an outer white covering, which is the shell. Again, inside we have the white layer, and you can see the yellow yolk, which is again one of the layers of the earth. So look at this egg. The outer shell, it is the outermost layer of the earth, which we call as the crust. The inner white layer, that resembles the viscous mantle that we have in the inside or the middle layer of the earth. And then when you see the yellow part, it is actually, this yolk resembles the innermost layer of the earth, which is the core. So easy for you to understand with the structure of the egg. Yes, this is how the structure of the earth looks like. The study of the seismic waves have given us a lot of information, and from that we have found that the earth has an outer layer like that shell of the egg which we saw, and that is called as the crust. It is the outermost layer. The middle viscous layer or semi-liquid it is. That is why we call it as a viscous or molten layer that we call as the mantle. And again the inner layer that is there in the center of the earth, which resembles the yolk in an egg, is what we call as the core. And this core is of two parts. The outer core, which is liquid, and the inner core, which is the innermost layer, that is the inner core, which is solid. So these are the different layers of the earth. Once again, the outermost layer of the earth is called as the crust. The middle layer, which is viscous, which is molten or semi-liquid, that is called as the mantle. And the innermost layer is called the core, which are of two parts. The outer core, which is liquid, and the inner core, which is solid. I hope up till this it has been understood by all. So first, it is the outermost layer which we call as the crust. It is a relatively thin layer, okay, and it is classified into the oceanic crust and the continental crust. Oceanic crust is the crust which is seen below the oceans, and continental crust is where the continents are placed. You know how many continents are there? 7 continents are there, and these continents is not stagnant, and when the tectonic plates move, these continents also move, and it is moving right now also. You don't feel it, but so our crust is made up of this oceanic crust and continental crust. And if you have to look into the size, the oceanic crust, can you see? The oceanic crust is just 5 kilometers thick, whereas look at the continental crust, it is 35 kilometers thick. So can you see the difference in thickness? Our crust is made up of the oceanic crust and the continental crust. Oceanic crust, as you can see here in this picture, is just 5 kilometers thick, and the continental crust 35 kilometers thick. Now, I'll let you know a very interesting fact. If I have to scale down this earth, that is, I scale down the earth to the size of this football. I scale down the earth the size of this football. Do you know what the thickness of the crust is? It is just half a millimeter thick. So the crust is not that thick. See the size of the crust, which is the outermost thin layer of the earth. When you compare it with the football, it's just half a millimeter thick. I hope you have understood what is the size of the crust. Now, let's just revise it once again. The crust is the outer thin layer of the earth. It is made up of the oceanic crust and the continental crust. The oceanic crust is the layer which is crust below the oceans, and it is 5 km thick, and the continental crust is 35 km thick. Now again, what you have to understand is the materials in this layer. That is, which are the materials in the continental crust and in the oceanic crust. First, let us look into the continental crust. The continental crust is composed of silica, alumina. Can you see? Silica and alumina. And the combination of these two is what we call as the Cr. Si for silica and Al for alumina. Cr. Can you see that? So the continental crust is made up of the silica and the alumina, and these combination, when the two combined, is what we call as the Cr. The next one, oceanic material. The oceanic material is again made up of silica, which has the symbol Si, and magnesium, Mg. In action, the symbol is Mg. And the combination again of these two is Sima, Si for silica, and Me for magnesium. So did you understand? The continental crust is what we call as Cr. It is made of the combination of silica and alumina. And the oceanic crust is made up of silica and magnesium. And it is this thin crust which actually breaks when an earthquake happens. Breaks open and a fault is created. You know what is a fault? When earthquake happens, a fault is created, a crack is created, and it is in this crust that the crack is created. Now, a very interesting fact. The crust makes up just 0.5 to 1% of the total volume of the earth. Just 0.5 to 1% of the total volume of the earth. So, what happens to the rest? 83% is made up of the viscous mantle, and the rest 16% comprises of the core. So did you understand? Let me tell you or revise just once again so that you get a better understanding. The crust is the outermost thin layer which consists of the oceanic and continental crust. Oceanic crust 5 kilometers thick, and the continental crust is 35 kilometers thick. The continental crust is made up of Cr, silica and alumina, and the oceanic crust is made up of Cma, Cr and magnesium. And again we saw it is the crust where a fault is created at the time of an earthquake. Again we saw that the crust comprises of just 0.5 to 1% of the total volume of the earth. The remaining 83% is made up of mantle, and next it is made up of 16% is made up of the innermost layer, which is the core. So, the next layer, the middle layer that we call as the mantle. Below the crust is a very viscous layer which is known as the mantle. And do you know what the thickness of the mantle is? It is 2,900 kilometers thick. A very, very thick layer. Which means this mantle is the thickest layer. And it is semi-liquid or molten layer, a viscous layer. Now if you have to compare the viscosity, then have you seen tar, the one which we use to build a road? Yes, it is more thick than the tar. That means it is a highly viscous material is present in the mantle. You have studied about the volcanoes. When volcano erupts, it is this molten layer that comes out as lava. And this magma is placed in a magma chamber. The mantle is the thickest layer. It is a very viscous layer. The thickness is 2,900 kilometers and it is made up of iron and magnesium. Again, it has high temperature and high pressure in the magma. So this is about the middle layer, which constitutes 83% of the volume of the earth. The mantle, which is a viscous layer, 2,900 kilometer thick and is placed in a magma chamber. It has components or the minerals present here are iron and magnesium. The last layer or the innermost layer is, which is found in the center of the earth, is the core. And I've already told that core, that is of two parts. That is the outer core and the inner core. The outer core is the layer which comes just below the mantle. And now, what is this outer core made up of? Again, the outer core is made up of nickel. Can you see nickel? Yes, Ni. Nickel and iron. See, iron. So, the outer core is made up of the nickel and iron, and this combination is what we call as knife. N-I-F-E. Here Fe stands for ferrous, which is a form of iron. So the outer core consists of nickel and iron, and that is why we call it as knife. And this is a very liquid layer, is what we call as the outer core. The materials here are in the liquid state. So that is about the outer core. Now the last layer, the innermost layer, which is the hottest layer, and this is the inner core. Do you know what the temperature here is? The temperature ranges from 5,000 to 6,000 degrees Celsius. See how hot it is. The temperature is so high. Yet an interesting fact here is the inner core is solid. Now you will ask me this question. The temperature is so high here, then how come it is solid? The answer is the pressure is also very, very high here. And this high pressure actually holds this layer firmly and it is hence solid. It is this high pressure which holds this layer firm and is solid. So you have seen which is the hottest part in the structure of the earth. It is the inner core is the hottest layer, and it is also very, very heavy because of the presence of many metals. It is made up of metals. So this is about the structure of the earth. I hope you have understood this. It is the study of seismic waves which gives us a proper understanding of the structure of the earth. You have the crust, which is the outermost thin layer. Then you have the mantle, which is the middle viscous layer, which is the thickest layer, and you have the outer and the inner core. So, my dear children, you have already learned about the structure of the earth. And here, what you have to learn is, you have to learn to draw the structure of the earth. It is there in your textbook, and you have to also write the properties of each layer, the structure of the earth. So this is your assignment for the day. It is draw a labeled diagram of the structure of the earth, and you have to say the important properties. Explain with the help of a diagram the structure of the earth. Please revise the chapter properly, and you have to have a loud reading of the text, then only it will be understood properly. And please prepare properly for your exams. Until we meet the next day, thank you.